Hello, my name is Kate. I am a feminist, environmentalist, outspoken woman of color. Lately, I have been seeing a lot of extreme weather events. Well, either more frequently or maybe I barely started to pay attention. I'm not quite sure, but there's a lot of talk about climate change. Let's just turn on the TV. We will see the news. They're full of environmental events. Let's take a look.
The devastating effects of El Niño. The lack of rain accompanied by heat waves. This is the worst drought to hit South Africa since 1982. Millions are facing water shortages.
Extended bulletin on Queensland's flood crisis.
First major snowstorm bringing the South to a standstill.
Doesn't look like we're moving anywhere anytime soon.
Whiteout conditions on South Carolina highways, and in Georgia, hazards and headaches for drivers stuck on
Towns and villages are no more as the mudslides power down hillsides north of Rio. What's left in their path is a blur of devastation. Unrecognizable as the places where people have made their homes. But in this country of haves and have-nots, so many shanty towns were too flimsy to withstand nature's onslaught.
More than 7,000 hectares up in smoke, plantations and bushland that have been burning since Friday. The blaze is active from its northern and southern points, firefighters battling the flames from both the ground and the air. It's slow moving but large and out of control. Crews have been unable to...
Millions of gallons of water pouring through the Swat Valley, a force of nature with no respect for the route it takes or the millions of people it's affecting. This is the principal town of Mingora in Swat. Streets and roads submerged, houses hidden beneath tons of muddy water, here flowing over the roof of one.
After watching all of those devastating images in the news, I can't help to wonder about all those people who have lost their families and are now displaced. However, have you ever wondered who are the most affected in these situations? When we hear about extreme events and think of climate change, we always think of natural disasters and how nature is affected. However, how does this affect humans? Are humans affected equally, or are some groups more affected than others? Well, one time I wondered, and I found some answers. That's where gender comes into play. Climate change has always been seen as an environmental problem. Yet, we're forgetting about a big part of the environment, us. By thinking about climate change through the eyes of gender, one can recognize that this is actually a social problem as well. I mean, we are the ones that are doing the damage. And I know climate change is sometimes questioned by climate skeptics. But there is more than a 90% consensus in the scientific community that supports that climate change is real and that it is due to anthropogenic actions, which means we are the ones that are causing it. I mean, it's not a coincidence the global average temperature has been increasing at the same rate as greenhouse emissions. And let's be real. Before we start to mess with the planet, there was not so much pollution. The planet, yes, it has gone through some rough patches, but not to this extreme velocity. We are going like 100 miles per environmental decade. But don't worry, Mr. President, it's all a hoax. I promise. Okay, good. Now that we have established that climate change is real. Oh, okay, sorry. A hoax. Have you ever wondered how women and men are differently affected by extreme weather events? Hold it there, right there. I forgot one thing. We have to make one more clarification before we can dive in. There is a difference between climate and weather. Weather refers to the day-by-day state of the atmosphere. For example, today it might be 70 degrees, tomorrow might be 72. The atmosphere is constantly changing, and that's what we call weather. Climate, on the other hand, refers to the average temperature and atmosphere state of a long period of time, usually measured by 30 years. Therefore, when we talk about climate change, we are talking about the average temperature and the atmosphere state of a long period of time. Okay, now that we got that out of the way, let's go back where we were at. Gender and climate change. Gender almost never comes into play when we're talking about climate change. And if it does, it's usually through a simplistic way of looking at gender issues. Women are usually framed as not only the most vulnerable, but also as more environmentally aware due to their supposed natural connection to Earth. This is also known as ecofeminism, but we can talk about that in another time. And yes, women are the most vulnerable in most of the situations. Yet nobody's asking, why is this happening? Why are they the most vulnerable and also the poorest? Are we really not going to acknowledge this social structure that systematically disadvantages women at a high rate? Oh, but wait, it gets better. The most important scientific and political organization regarding climate change, the IPCC, which is a climate organization that aims to provide the most accurate and up-to-date information about the climate. They don't even mention the word gender in the report that they put out every 6 years. And they only mention men when they're referring to mankind and the damaging activities we are doing to create climate degradation. It's crucial for important organizations like the IPCC to start recognizing gender issues and including them into the climate change debate. It's predicted that extreme weather events await us, and we better start paying attention to who are the ones who are mainly affected. One of the biggest effects climate change will have is global warming. Rising temperatures are due to the high amount of emissions we put in the atmosphere. These emissions are greenhouse gases, which are emitted when we burn fossil fuel. Well, something that we do almost every day. With high temperatures, heat waves are one of the biggest concerns. On the summer of 2003 in Europe, they suffered an extreme heat wave, which lasted for a couple of days. Thousands were killed. And in this case, women were disproportionately disadvantaged due to respiratory or vascular conditions, and also because they tend to live alone. In 1995, in Chicago, Illinois, they also suffered from an extreme heat wave. However, in this case, The ones who were mostly affected did not only differ from gender, but also from race. African Americans were mostly affected, especially men. This disadvantage was due to the unequal distribution of sources and all of the other socially constructed disadvantage African Americans suffer in the United States. However, that's a very intense talk that we can leave for another day. And men were mostly affected due to the toxic mentality they possessed. Men have the socially constructed idea that they always have to be strong, which means they have to be self-reliant and avoid trouble. This causes them not to seek help, which puts them at a higher risk. Drought is another environmental problem which has gender differences. Water is not only crucial for the family but also for crops. And of course, due to the household roles, women carry a bigger burden. Women have to walk miles in order to fetch water. They have to spend many times of their days outside of their home collecting supplies. Girls at a very young age are forced to drop out of school to help their mother with these daily household activities. And of course, it's not F for them. They also acquire back problems due to the high amount of water and food supplies they have to carry. Moreover, they also are put at high risk due to sexual violence. In some African countries, like in Kenya, girls are married at a very young age in order to acquire money to feed the family. They are called drought brides. However, women are not the only ones that are disproportionately affected by climate change. The US and Australia are two of the biggest wildfire environments in the world. Wildfires are devastating and they're taking a big toll on men. This is due again to toxic masculinity. This is once again killing men at higher rates because men are staying to protect their home. Also, men become firefighters at a higher rate. Therefore, they're put into higher risk. And lastly, sea level rise is also a big concern, and storms are a consequence. In Bangladesh, where half of its population lives in coastal community, in 1991, Storm Mariana devastated the country. Many lives were lost, and 90% of those were women and children. In Bangladesh, women do not have the same resources as men, and their social status is very low, which puts them at a higher risk. Women are also responsible for the children and the elders' care. Moreover, sometimes something as simple as knowing how to swim could save your life. However, due to cultural and religious practices, women are not allowed or sometimes are not even taught how to swim. Hurricanes are also a big part of the sea level rise issue. Hurricane Katrina is one of the biggest and most destructive hurricanes to hit the US in the recent times. And in this extreme weather event, we saw a similar result as in the Chicago heat wave. Gender was not the only factor. Race also played a big role. After looking at all of these extreme weather events, we have to recognize who are the ones who are mostly affected. It's crucial for us to start recognizing gender as part of the climate debate. Men and women are affected differently due to their social roles. We have to fix gender inequality in order to implement policies that would create less inequality. We have to empower women and not frame them as victims. And we also have to make sure men are seeking help. Our society is not a one fit all. We have to consider individual differences and consider them in order to find solutions. Extreme weather events are going to continue happening at a high rate and they're going to get worse with time. Therefore, it's crucial for us to identify who are the ones that are mostly affected. And after all of this information I have given you, I am pretty sure we can all agree that people are affected differently. Therefore, we have to put in those differences into the table and discuss them. Well, that's all for today. I hope you have a great day and see you next time. Bye bye.